Good evening. Today's Amud is Maseches Berachos Daf Yud Beis. We are going to begin from the top of Yud Beis, Amud Beis, 12b. We begin the share tonight by thanking all of our sponsors. We thank Josh and Becca Friedman for sponsoring all the shiurim of this month. We thank Sammy Malka Esterson for sponsoring all the shiurim of this month. And we thank the Pepper family sponsoring all the shiurim this month. May our Talmud Torah be a schos for all those who need refuah shlema. May it be a zechus for all the neshamas in Aliyah and for all those in Klal Yisrael who need a Yeshua. I'm not exactly sure where we're starting from, but I think we're going to start from the second line because I was led to believe that Rabbi Silver left off on 12a, but I found that when I got here this evening, Rabbi Silver got to the top of 12b. Is that true? 12b?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll start from the second line on Yud Beis Amud Beis. We are going through a number of quotes from Rabbi Bar Chinana Saba Mishmei Derav. So the Gemara starts. V'amar Rabbi Bar Chinana Saba Mishmei Derav Kol Hashana Kula. The entire year, Adam Ispal Hakel HaKadosh. Nishbon Esrei, a person ends off the bracha of Kedusha with Hakel HaKadosh and the bracha of Hashivish of Tenu with Melech Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat. Chutz mi'asara yom shebein Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim. Besides for the Aseret Simei Tshuva, Shem Espal HaMelech HaKadosh. A person ends off the bracha about the Kadosh with HaMelech HaKadosh. The HaMelech HaMishpat, instead of saying Melech Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat, he ends off with HaMelech HaMishpat. Rabbi Lazar says, Afilu Amar Hakel HaKadosh, even if a person says Hakel HaKadosh in the bracha about the Kadosh, Yatza, he has fulfilled his mitzvah. Shnemar, for it says in the pasuk Vayigba Hashem tzivakos b'mishpat v'hakel hakadosh nikdash b'tzedakah. So in the Rosh Hashanah davening, we bring down the pasuk of Vayigba Hashem tzivakos, which is a pasuk in Yeshaya, and Hashem is referred to as Hakel hakadosh, so it would be okay. And the Hidarshans Emasai Vayigba Hashem tzivakos. When is Hashem going to be elevated by mishpat? When will Hashem be melech? When will HaKadosh Baruch Hu be elevated by Mishpat? That is Elu Asar Yom Rosh Hashanah V'Yad Yom Kippurim V'Komer Hakel HaKadosh. It still says in the pasuk Hakel HaKadosh. So since that time of the year is the time that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name is elevated, and it still says Hakel HaKadosh, therefore it is appropriate to end off the bracha about the Kadosh with the words Hakel HaKadosh. Gemara says, okay, now we have a machlok, because we have two different opinions. My Havi Allah, what is the halacha? We need to know practically. During Aseret Simei Tshuva, a person ends off with Hakel HaKadosh. Has he fulfilled his mitzvah or not? Does he have to go back and say it again? What's the halacha? Amar of Yosef, Hakel HaKadosh, Umelech Oev Tzedakah Mishpat. A person is fine if they say Hakel HaKadosh and Melech Oev Tzedakah Mishpat. Rabbi says, HaMelech HaKadosh, one must say HaMelech HaKadosh, V'Hamelech HaMishpat and V'Hamelech HaMishpat. And the Gemara answers, V'Hilchas HaKarabba, we pass like Rabbi, and this is what we're familiar with. During our Aseret Simei Tshuva, we are careful that we say Hakel HaKadosh and HaMelech HaKadosh. Interestingly, it's important to point out that there's a very timely Tosfos over here, because tomorrow night we begin saying V'Sein Tal U'Matar. Normally, in a normal year, we'd start tonight on December 4th, but because this year we have the February 29th, we have an extra day, so we postpone the same Talamatra till tomorrow night. Generally speaking, we start in the evening of December 4th. So if you forgot to say the same Talamatra tonight, you're in good shape. You shouldn't have said it tonight. We start tomorrow evening. But that being the case, let's just learn this Tosfos really quickly. Because Tosfos talks about what happens if a person is not sure what they said. A person gets into a certain routine by rote. He continues with his davening. Now, generally speaking, what we say is, we're just going to read it over here. Hilchasa Karabba. Let's just learn the Tosfos quickly. Ditzarech lachtom hamelech hakadosh v'hamelech hamishpat. The person needs to end off with hamelech hakadosh and hamelech hamishpat. V'im lo amar machzir noso. If he didn't do that, he has to repeat it. And he says that we don't pass him like this, but he says v'chein. Similarly, zachreinu l'chayim umi kamocha uchsov l'chayim ubeseif l'chayim machzir noso. If a person forgets one of those, he has to go back. Why imlo amar the kolamishanim matpeah shetavach chachamim eino yotzei decho vaso. He has not fulfilled his obligation. L'maisa, the bottom line is we only make someone go back if they forget Hakel HaKadosh, but not any one of the other ones. Now, he goes on to say, V'chein pasuk Rabbeinu Yehuda. I'm just going to skip down 2 more lines. It says, Hayam espala, ve'eino yodea im hizker talo matar. Person's davening. He finishes, he's like, oh, shoot, I'm not sure if I said the same talo matar or the same bracha. Now, I'm sure it does not happen to anybody here, but it happens to some people that happens. V'im lav. So the halach is kol shloshim yom, the first 30 days, b'chezkas shalo lamud. We assume he's not used to the switch. Pirush shalo amar ela kamoshahu lamud ad ata. We assume he just fell into the routine that he has the rest of the year. Shalo amar kain, achar kain, afterwards b'chezkas shehizkir. We assume he did say it. V'hu adin l'chol dvarim shetzarach lahazkir kach adin v'imkein b'aseres me'tshuva d'leka shloshim yom tzarach lachzar. So he says, so why is it when it comes to aseres me'tshuva, it's impossible that a person will move themselves into the routine because the whole thing lasts only 10 days. Now, there are those who have the suggestion that say, what's the point in 30 days? The point is that we assume after a person said it 90 or 100 times, they've already trained their mouth or their mind to get into that routine. So therefore, there are people who have a minhag. Whenever we make any of these switches, they go into the corner and they say, and they sit there for it takes about 5 minutes, and then they get themselves used to doing it. Similarly, in the bracha of Baruch Aleinu, that's Kol Meis Waslo Tova, the same Talamater. That's Kol Meis Waslo Tova, the same Talamater. They do that 90 times. They say, it's it. I've said it enough times that I've trained my brain to get myself into the routine. Now, why can't you do that during Aseres Me'Tshuva? The reason is because when it comes to Hakel HaKadosh, if you do it, you can't say Baruch Atah and then say Hashem's name, because it's a bracha levatala. So therefore, you'd have to say is Baruch to Hashem. And then you don't want to get yourself into the routine of doing that. So therefore, you're pretty much stuck. You can't play any tricks with it. Now, interestingly, it's an interesting thing to think about. Because why do we say that if a person's not sure, a person finishes davening, and he legitimately says, I'm not sure. I just don't know what I said. Why don't we say it's a suffix brachos? Because the halacha is, anytime you have a suffix bracha, you don't make the bracha again. The answer is, because it's not a suffix. What Tosfos is telling us is, if it's within the first 30 days, we know for sure what you said. You might not be sure, but between you and I and the lamppost, everybody knows that first 30 days, you made a mistake. Now, what the nafkamina is, if a person actually at the end of the 30 days, he feels like he's gotten into the routine. So then it could be that at some point there, you don't have to have an exact number. Once you feel you're actually legitimately into the category of a suffix, then we don't have to repeat it. But that's a good shayla. But ultimately, let's get back to our Amud, because we don't have that much time. It's not Amud Yomi anymore? We'll see what we can do. Where should we get up to? 9:20? 9:20 is the cutoff? 25? Okay, you give me the signal when we're done. Okay. I was actually wondering, because I gave the share last week on Monday, and it was Daf Yud Aleph. It's a whole week later. We're only 1 hour later. What happened here? But either way. If a person has the ability to be able to be mispal for somebody else, and he doesn't, he's considered a chote. He's actually done an avera. How do we know that? Shenemar gam anochi chaliluli mechato laHashem mechadol l'spal ba'adchem. So this is Shmuel. He's talking about. He says chaliluli mechato laHashem mechadol l'spal ba'adchem. In other words, woe to me if I'm not going to be mispal for you. And he says clearly mechato laHashem. Will be a sin to Hashem. So Shmuel is saying that if I don't daven for you, then it's an avera that I have on my hand. So Amar Rav says, "Im Talmud Chacham hu tzarich sheyechla atzmo." If there's a Talmud Chacham who needs someone else's tefillos, and a person says, "You know what? I'm not going to bother." No, that's not what the Gemara says. If the person who's sick is a Talmud Chacham, you have a chiyuv to make yourself sick over it. In other words, you have to be mispal so much to the point that you actually get sick over it. How does he know this? My taima ilema mishum l'chsiv. What's the reason for the ilema? Is it because mishum l'chsiv, for it says in the pasuk ve'ein cholam mikem alai? This is talking about when Shaul was being chased, but he was having his issues with David, and he was complaining to those who were around him, and he said to them, ve'ein cholam mikem alai, v'golani es azni. No one here seems to be worried about me. I'm having all these problems with David, and no one seems to be getting sick over what's happening with me. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. Dilma melech shani. Maybe we're talking about a melech. Shaul was the king. So the king is very different than the standard Talmid Chacham. Elam Chacham, this must be comes from here. Vani b'chalosam levushi. I got sick. In other words, I dressed myself in challah because of Talmid Chacham who is sick. So we see from here two very important things. When a person has the ability to be mispal for somebody, the person has to make sure to do it. It's not such a big deal to be mispal for someone. And when we're talking about a Talmid Chacham who needs tefillas, we have to actually dive into the point where we make ourselves sick. It's an interesting thing. We know that there's a widespread practice that people wait for the Rav to finish Mon Esrei before they start Kaddish or the repetition, the Chazar Sashatz. What's the standard understanding for it? The standard understanding is that it's Derech Eretz. I mean, there's a Rav in a shul, and you wait for him to start Kedusha. I actually heard something really very beautiful once. I remember I was younger, and I was diving in a shul that had just gotten a new Rav, and he received a letter from Shmuel Birnbaum. His Rebbe was Shmuel Birnbaum, and he told him, he says, I know that people understand the reason why people wait for you is because it's Derech Eretz to wait for the Rav. He said, I want you to know that's not the reason. The reason people wait for you is because as the Rav, the expectation is, you know different difficulties that people are having in their life. The expectation is that you're going to daven for them. So it's only respectful that if the reason why it's taking you longer to daven for people, to daven your Shemon Esrei, is because you're davening for people. So it's only respectful for those people to wait for you to finish davening. The point that he was writing to him was, don't let it get to you that everybody's waiting for you to finish davening. Like, wow, look how special, everyone's waiting for me. The reason they're waiting for you is because you should be davening for them. So it's an interesting thing, and it comes from this Gemara. The idea, you know that somebody needs your tefillah. People come, they confide in you, they talk to you about difficulties they're going through. It gives you an obligation to be able to be mispal for them. That being the case, the Rosh Shemon Esrei often takes longer than everybody else's Shemon Esrei. Why? Because there are a lot of things the Rav is keeping in mind. It's not just personal things. There are a litany of things that the Rav is busy with, the Rav's mind is occupied with, and that's the reason why people should be waiting for the Rav to finish Shemon Esrei again, because assuming the Rav is being mispal for the tzibur. The Gemara goes on. Person who does an avera and he's embarrassed by the fact that he committed that avera. So there's two ways of understanding this. One way is he got busted. Okay, that's embarrassing. Okay, nobody wants to get busted committing an avera. There's another way of understanding this, which I think is the correct pshat, which is a person looks at himself and says, "I can't believe I did that." And they are personally embarrassed by the fact, look what I did to myself. I consider myself to be a person of stature, and look at me, I made such a bad mistake. I think that's what it's talking about. A person's embarrassed. It doesn't have to be that anybody else knows about it. It doesn't have to be that they got embarrassed in front of others. A person doesn't embarrass, says, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed I did that. Well, halacha is, mochlin lo al kol avonosav. Kadosh Baruch Hu forgives him for all his averos. Never, for it says in the pasuk, l'man tizkari uboshes v'lo yelecha od pischon peh mipnei klimascha bechapri lach l'cha asher asisa nu'am Hashem alikim. So you see very clearly where it says over here, mipnei klimasecha, because you're embarrassed, and therefore bekapri lach, there'll be a kapara for everything. The Gemara says, hold on, that was referring to a case where there was a tzibor did something wrong. Dilma betzibor shani, that's talking about when there's a group of people. Maybe it's different when it's an individual. The Gemara says, Elami hacha. It must be, it comes from here. V'yomer Shmuel el Shaul. Shmuel told Shaul. Now the background to the story was that Shmuel HaNavi already died. And Shaul made a lot of mistakes. He, by mistake, to say, he killed out all the Kehanim. Noiv Ira Kehanim. Now, he had a problem. He wasn't sure if he should go to war or not. He couldn't go to the Urim V'Tumim to ask them, because there were no more Urim V'Tumim, because he killed the Kehanim in Noiv. Shmuel Hanavi wasn't there anymore, who was the person who generally gave him advice. He was dead. So he was stuck. So the story goes, this is before in the Psukim, he went to Shmuel, he took Shmuel Hanavi out of Gan Eden. He pulled Shmuel Hanavi out of Gan Eden to ask him what he should do. Now the pasuk says, Shmuel responded and said, Loma here gas tani lahal ososi. What are you bothering me? I'm in Gan Eden. What are you bothering me? Vayomer, he said Shmuel, Vayomer Shaul, and Shaul said, Tzarli ma'od. I'm having a lot of pain. The plishtim nilchamim bi. The plishtim are fighting with me. Hashem sarme alai. Hashem is no longer speaking with me. V'lo aneni. He's not answering me. Od. V'lo aneni od. And then gam biyada neviim. Gad biyada hachalamos. Ve'ekra lachalo di'eni ma'as. I'm calling to you, Shmuel, to find out what I should do. Now, v'ilu urim v'tumim lo ka'amar. Why did he not say that he can't go to the urim v'tumim? Mishum tekatli lenov yarat kohanim. Because he killed all the Kohanim in Nov. Now, he must have been embarrassed. That's the point. The point was he was so embarrassed by what he had done, he didn't even want to mention to Shmuel that I can't go to the Urim V'Tumim because look what I did. So therefore, we see that he was embarrassed. The Gemara says, Min Shemaya. How do we know that ultimately he had a kapara? The Gemara says, Shenemar umachar ata ubanecha imi. Shmuel told him, by the way, you should just know tomorrow you'll be with me. In other words, you know where you be. In other words, he's going to die soon. So, and the Amar Rabbi Yochanan imi b'michitzasi. That means you'll be with me. Because again, Shmuel Hanavi was in Gan Eden, so he said you'll be with me b'michitzasi in my quarters, which means that he had a kapara and he was in a better place. Rabbanan Amri mihach. Rabbanan say we know it from here because it says Voikanum laHashem begiv Ashal bechir Hashem. What does that mean? It means Yatsa Baskal, the heavenly voice came out of Amra, Bechir Hashem, and it said that he is Bechir Hashem, he's from the chosen ones of Hashem. So if he's from the chosen of Hashem, he must have had a kapara. So he was embarrassed at what happened with the Ir Kohanim, and ultimately he achieved the kapara to be from the chosen of Hashem. We'll try to get to the Mishnah. Amar Rabavo. Rabavo said, Amar Rabavo ben Zitrasi. Amar of Yehuda, Bar Zvida, Bikshu Lekavoa Parshas Balak B'Kriyas Shema. They wanted to put the entire Parshas Balak in Kriyas Shema. Just imagine. Okay? Umipnei Latma Lo Kavua. Why didn't they do that? Mishum Torach Tzibur. Because it's going to be too much of a bother. Everyone has to come, be Maver Sedra. The entire Shnai Mikra V'Echet Targum of Parshas Balak, every time they have to say Kriyas Shema, it's going to be very difficult. So Gemara says, My Taima. Why do they want to do that? Why do you even want to put it there? It's because it says Kel Motzion Mitzrayim. It says the Parshas Balak Hashem took the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. So if that's the case, if every time it says in the Torah that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim and put it into Krishma, so then name it Parshas Ribis. Put the whole Parsha of Ribis in there. The Parshas Mishkalos, about the Parshas of weights and interest. Why the Chsiv ben Yitzias Mitzrayim? It says Yitzias Mitzrayim there also. Elam Rabbi Yossi bar Oven Mishum the Chsiv bei Haikra, because it says this pasuk of Karash Shachav Ka'ari Ukalavi Miyakumenu talks about the lion crouching and again the lion getting up. So again, it sounds very similar to B'Shach B'Chav Kumecha. There's the lion crouching, the lion getting up. That's the pasuk they wanted to be there. So Gemara says, all right, so add in one pasuk. We can handle one more pasuk in Kriyas Shema. What's the big deal? The Gemara says, V'sulo. The Gemara answers, Gemiri, we learned called Parshat de Paska Moshe Rabbeinu Paskinan, Lo Paska Moshe, Lo Paskinan. We don't stop where Moshe didn't stop, and therefore we'd have to write the whole story of Balak. You know what? Let's just quickly do it. Parshat Tzitzis, Mipnei Makavua. Why did they put the Parshat Tzitzis in Kriyas Shema? Amar Yehuda bar Chaviva, Mipnei Sheyesh ba Chamisha Dvarim. There are 5 things in Parshat Tzitzis, which are Mitzvahs Tzitzis, Yitzias Mitzrayim, all mitzvos. There's the yoke of mitzvos, V'das Minim, the mind of heretics, and Hira Avera, V'hira Avodah Zarah, thoughts of Averis and idol worship. So the following 3 are very clear, which are all mitzvos, the yoke of mitzvahs, the chsiv, where it says, Urisim also is the chartim is called mitzvos Hashem. You'll see the tzitzis, you remember all the mitzvahs Hashem. Okay? Tzitzis, the mitzvah of tzitzis, the chsiv, v'asul lam tzitzis. That's very clear. Yitzias Mitzrayim, the issue about the Yitzias Mitzrayim, going out of Mitzrayim, the chsiv Hashem Tzitzi, So it says very clearly, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Ela das minim hira avera vira avodah zara minala. Where does it talk about heretics, averos and avodah zara? The Gemara answers the Tanya, for it says in the Brayso achrei levavchem, when it says los asuru achrei levavchem, zu minis, that refers to heresy. Chenu omar noval belibo ein elokim. So you see the idea of belibo, when it refers to people's hearts, that refers to ein elokim, refers to a heretic. Achrei Nechem, when it says Los Asur Achrei Levavchem Zehir Avera, that refers to thoughts of Avera. Shneimar, for it says Vayomer Shimshon El Aviv, when Shimshon told his father Kach Osa Kachli Kihi Yeshara Ve'enai. When Shimshon told his father Manoach that he wants to marry one of the Plishti girls, he said, "This is the girl that I would like to marry." Why? Because she is Yeshara Ve'enai. In other words, I looked at her and I was attracted to her because of what I saw in my eyes. So again, eyes refers to thoughts of Averos, and Asher Atem Zonim, when it says Asher Atem Zonim, Zehir Avodah Zara, that refers to thoughts of idol worship. Chenu Amar v'Yiznu Achrei Baalim, the same word, v'Yiznu Achrei Baalim, talks about when the Yidden, unfortunately, were following the Avodah Zara of Baal. We'll continue Hashem tomorrow evening with the Mishnah at the bottom. Have a wonderful night.